Welcome to the ThisABILITY Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team ThisABILITY.
We are here in Florida. We're getting ready for the Florida Sea-to-Sea expedition race. It's a 74-hour race from the Panhandle over to St. Augustine this year. It's a new route on the northern part of Florida. And we've done this race 5 times already. This will be our 6th time. For us, it sort of feels like we're coming home. Like this is one of our home races. We know the people well, and we always look forward to it. And we've learned a lot from this race. It was one of our earlier expedition races, and we've applied what we've learned to a lot of other races. And we thought we would share what we hope to remember to do this time, and the knowledge that we've gained. Hopefully it will help this year, but that's what our podcast is going to be about.
This is a deep dive on the sea-to-sea, quick and dirty.
Yeah, quick and dirty.
Quick and
Hopefully
dirty.
not, too boring,
No.
but yet thorough.
Yeah, thorough. Because we see, like, we're on the social media with Florida Sea-to-Sea has a Facebook page, and then there's also a Florida Adventure Racing page. And so we're seeing a lot of questions from people. And the Sea-to-Sea is it's like the perfect first expedition. Like if you've done your normal backyard 24-hour and you're ready to step it up to something that's, more than 48 hours, 3 days long, this is the perfect race. Like don't go do some crazy international race until you've done the Sea-to-Sea a couple times if you're smart. But either way, we see a lot of questions on social, and so we're going to try to burn through a lot of topics very quick, just a fire hose of information. Sound good? All right, so let's start off. My favorite part about the Sea-to-Sea is it's like a big party. Like it's like so many people come every year. You start getting to know the crowd. There's a dinner the night before. We usually host an ice cream social at, was it Brewster's? Brewster's.
Yeah.
Ice cream right after the race brief. We get a group of people and we head down there and we get ice cream. Just one last little celebration before you hit the beds. And then, of course, after the Sea-to-Sea, there's always like a dinner and an after party and all of that. It's just a lot of fun before and after the race. That's one of my favorite parts about that.
Yeah, and it is continuing to be the largest adventure race and the largest expedition race
in the U.S.
Yep. And that not only does it feel a little bit like a party before and after, but sometimes even during,
Yes.
The TAs are quite a party. They're hard to leave. There's hot food.
Music playing.
Yeah. So that you're not going to find that at a lot of other expedition races. But it's still really awesome.
Totally. For those of you that are brand new to adventure racing, or this is your first expedition, this is the perfect race for you. But I'm not going to say it's easy. A lot of times people mistake it. It's Florida. It's flat. How hard can it be? The weather's going to be warm and yada. This is one of those races that it's extremely difficult to clear the course.
Well, maybe we should say why we think it's great for beginners, though. If it's not easy, why is it great for beginners?
Okay, so it's great for beginners because all of the checkpoints are optional. You really just have to get from the one side through each TA to the other side of Florida. You could skip all the checkpoints. Nobody cares. And, you can sleep 8 hours at each TA if you want. It's one of these,
everybody cares. You can choose how much you care.
You choose how much you care. There you go. But for the top teams, if you want to be competitive, very few teams will clear this course. If it's like the last 5 years,
we have never cleared a course.
We've never cleared it. We've tried hard.
We've come closer and closer, but it's hard.
Right. So you can really, really push yourself on this and be challenged. The navigation's actually challenged. We're going to get into that a little bit, but without mountains and without top topography to go off of, you really have to be good on your navs.
And that makes it so much underbrush. It's it's hard to keep a bearing.
Yes. And there's a wide array of checkpoints. Some of the checkpoints will be at a dock overlooking a beautiful pond, super easy to find. And others are like 100 meters back in the bush. You really got to know exactly where you are to find them. But we call those fool's points, but they're usually kind of way off on the map where you can skip those if this is your first time. Usually it's pretty easy to identify the hard checkpoints.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Next up. So if if you're new to Florida, let's say you're driving down from, whatever, Maine or something like that, you just want to know what the vegetation's like. They're right south of St. Augustine. There's a great little area. It's called Moses Creek. I think it's like a conservation area, and there's some trails there, fun mountain biking trails, and that'll give you a feel for the terrain. It's a close place to just do a shakedown on the bikes and the gear and get a feel for Florida. So I would definitely recommend going down there if you're not familiar with Florida. The As we're going to get into in a little bit, it's not all flat, believe it or not. There's actually, we went biking yesterday at a place. I was like, wow, there's actually some hills here.
Yeah, but that park in particular, it's really good to get the feel of the trails when we're on trails, but there's a wide variety of surfaces that you're going to be on.
Yes. And we're going to get into terrain in a second. So let's start off with the weather. It's always sunny in Florida, right? It's always warm.
That one year, I don't know. We'll probably be saying that a lot during this podcast, but there was one year when we were knocking ice off of our bike seats, and I thought that was the coldest race I'd ever done because we were paddling in, sub 30 weather. It was
cold.
Below freezing.
The dew was landing, and everything it landed on turned to a sheet of ice. And of course, you're out there all night long just with this dew on you. It was super cold.
That was an anomaly. I think, it's not going to get super, super cold usually, but it will feel colder than you think.
Yeah.
Just because it's humid and there's a fine line between comfortable and cold and hot even, you might be sweating your butt off, even though it's not sunny. But when there is sun, it's pretty full on, it's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And you need to protect from the sun. We usually wear long sleeves on paddles, especially because we're not usually shaded.
And during a race, especially if you're sweating, it's hard to keep sunscreen on. So like we choose to wear the big floppy hats and cover up, and that way you're not worried about sunscreen during the race. But we'll see people out there with just a ball cap and their necks exposed to the sun, and somehow they survive it. Just you do you on this, but it is Florida. It is sunny a lot of the time. But also be prepared for anything, because it like right now it's been raining nonstop for 2 days. So.
Which that's another thing. You're going to be wet, whether it's raining or not raining or sunny or cold, whether it's sweat or dew or whatever. It's almost like, oh, should I even change my clothes? Like you get excited to put a dry layer of clothes on, and then instantly you're either sweating again or you're tromping through a swamp again. So you need to be prepared to be wet most of the time, which means you need to have your feet prepped and ready. You need to know how to take care of them. They're going to be wet a lot. And from what we understand this year, it's going to be really wet.
Yeah. I think that area of the Florida Trail and the Panhandle has been flooded. If you watched Hunter do that 1,000-mile something run across or from the bottom of Florida to the top, I think he was going through waist deep water in the Florida Trail, on the Florida Trail. So,
amazing.
So I think we're going to be wet. So we call it being swim ready, to where you just like just everything in your pack is, you're ready for a downpour, you're ready to swim across the river. You want like a good dry bag. All of your gear basically should be ready to get dunked. And that's just a good way to go into the race. Even if you don't get dunked, it's Florida and it's wet, and there's usually in these races there's like a little stream crossing, river crossing. Sometimes you can hold your pack above your head to get across, but I think it's going to be a wet race.
Yeah, and it's surprising, the little things you can cut time on to be more efficient. So if your stuff is already in the dry bag, already cinched up, and you don't even have to think about it, you can just trudge right on through. Little bits of time are saved that way, and they all add up.
Yep.
So, but the feet.
Yeah, the feet's the important part.
Yeah.
Right? So use some type of lube.
Part.
And hopefully you've already trained for this or listened to other podcasts on it, because you can do a whole podcast on just feet. But basically, you want to keep your feet clean. Like if they get sand, you want to get your socks off, get the sand all out of it, re-lube. I know Bend Racing, I think they talk about it like every 5 or 6 hours they stop and they automatically, everybody fixes their feet and re-lubes and everything on a cadence. And that way you're not waiting until you have a blister. You're doing it preemptively. And so the idea is that the entire team stops, everybody does their feet, whether you need it or not. It keeps your feet in the game. But just don't wait. Don't let your teammates like not say anything until you've got this like big foot problem. At that point, you've already torched your feet.
And it is kind of hard to, be bold enough to say, we're going to stop. I need to stop, even though it might just be a little bit of a hot spot, or, you've got miles more sand to go through, but I don't anticipate we're going to have as much sugar sand as we have in the past. But, you do have to judge, like, I'm going to get it out now, but in 5 more minutes, they're going to be wet and sloppy again. But, you got to do it.
Just preemptively fix stuff. Don't let it get out of hand. Some people do use gaiters, like the little ankle gaiters that stop the sand from getting in your shoes. So if that's something you want to try to do to keep the sand out, that's a good thing. But a lot of us are using running shoes, and it just comes through the webbing in the shoe. So it's hard to keep the sand out.
Are you using shoe gaiters this year?
Probably not. I use the bungee cord shoestring, so I can just pull the shoes off real quick, knock the sand out, and put them back on. So I don't have a problem getting like rocks out of my shoes. But if you tie your shoes and double knot them, and then you get something in your shoe, it's a pain in the butt to get it untied and retied. So that's why I don't use gaiters anymore, just because I can pop my shoe off real quick. Now that sucks in the mud. You guys that wear shoelaces, you can pull your foot. Meanwhile, my shoe's still in the mud. So there's pros and cons of that.
Yeah, that's a definite possibility too.
It is. Oh yeah, we're gonna walk through mud.
Yeah. I think I'm going to wear shoe gaiters. I always wear shin gaiters, which kind of brings us to the topic of terrain. But you're going to be going through things that will slice up your skin.
Yes.
Your legs, your arms, your shins, those palms. A lot of them are, waist high to head high, and of course even taller. But they're
like little, they slice you as you walk through them. Again, if you're going fast and bushwhacking through it, it's some of the vegetation is pretty thick,
and there's briars too.
There's also briars.
There's some cactus too.
I think there are cactus. The briars too are not the normal briars. I think they're brambles or something. They're the ones that like they hook onto you and they don't let go and they will just shred. So have the ability to cover your legs. Like one year it was super hot. And so I was just wearing like bike shorts, had my knees exposed. And then we went to go get a checkpoint. I actually had a pair of long leggings that I could put on over it so I could get through the briars and everything. But just if you see, we're going to see people with their legs exposed. And at the end of the race, they look like a cat, just like shredded them.
I just don't remember what year it was, but it felt like we were in a prison of brambly guck. Like you could not take one step forward, backwards, side to side without being tangled up in this stuff. And we were definitely not the only ones there. And we did learn the next
by that
year.
Ball field, right? It's on the right side.
If we had attacked it from the other side completely, no problem at all. But we and most people attacked it, going straight through all that trash.
So that is
anyway.
Some of the stuff is non-penetrable. Like you have to go around. It's like you just can't get through it.
Maybe we should suggest to go around.
You go around. There you go.
If you find yourself in that situation.
All right. So the other nice thing is, I know Jim Farmer just did some sneaking around trying to figure out where the course is, and it looks like there's probably going to be quite a few stores along the route, probably on the bike section more than the trek section. But so there may be the ability to source food along the way, which a lot of the big expeditions you could never spend money if you tried because you're so remote. So in this situation, we're probably going to come across stores, and man, after 48 hours of doing whatever, coming up on like a Wawa or a Taco Bell is like heaven.
Well, you said sneak around. That's another reason why this race is kind of considered a beginner race, because the route itself, the general route, is posted online and you can see generally where you're going to go. You don't usually have that to go on for other expedition races. But it wasn't really sneaking. I mean, you can go on Google and say, oh, there's a town there. There's a town there. We're likely to see some things. And we will. We will see McDonald's, hopefully, at least once.
Yeah.
And Taco Bell maybe once.
But it's fun. Like you got, it's like there's two types of navigators. There's the one that studies everything to try to figure out the course in advance. And then there's the navigators like Big Whoop. When I see the maps, I see the maps. I don't care. Figure it out. And so I used to be the study person, and then now I'm leaning more towards I just wait till I get the maps. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this. But either way, Jim Farmer puts a lot of work into trying to guess the course, and so it's pretty fun to kind of see it and see.
It's only fun after the fact to see if you got it right or not. But before the fact, it just takes so much time. I ain't got time for that.
That's true.
Anyway, as far as trekking though, too, the hiking poles, you might be surprised would help you in such a flat race, but we have often used hiking poles on the longer trekking legs, and just takes that little bit of strain off of your feet.
Especially if somebody's had blisters. So
Yeah.
it's like, even if you don't use them like the beginning treks, like have them in your gear bin, because later in the race you might really need them, or a teammate might need them. But it's nice to have. But definitely get the light ones. You know, spend the money and get some decent ones. Because they do make some very heavy hiking poles. So let's see. Well, okay, so the Florida Trail, it's like from the bottom of Florida all the way to the Panhandle. So my guess is a lot of this is going to be on the Florida Trail. So it is marked. It's a nice trail. It's almost like double track in a lot of areas. It's like
Orange blazes.
Orange blazes, is that what it is? Yeah. But it does get rerouted from time to time based on the flooding, especially after watching Hunter's thing. It looked like it got rerouted quite a few times. And so it might be a little tricky. And you know, also with the maps, like I think Jeff is probably going to be using CalTopo for his maps, like he's done the last 5 years. And CalTopo does not update, you know, that quickly. So if they've rerouted a trail in the last 2 months, it might not be on the map yet. And so, as with any race, assume there's going to be some things that are there that aren't on the map, or some things on the map that aren't really there in real life. So just have your head on a swivel on some of that stuff. Let's see what else. Dry lube on your bike chain. This is a very sandy environment. You're not going to go. Most of the bike trails and stuff don't have a lot of mud, but sand is what you're going to be dealing with. So unless it's like pouring down rain and you really need wet lube, it's best to use the dry lube, and that way the sand doesn't get like caked on your chain and your drivetrain. So that's what I would recommend. And also have oil. Keep oil with you, or at least have it in your TA bin so that you can oil your chain on a regular basis. A lot of these nice chains these days, it's like if you laid your bike down when you got to a trek section and the dew gets on the bike, your chain might be rusty by the next day. And so you want to be able to lube it up. You don't want to hear somebody squeaking as they're going down the road. It's just inefficient.
Yeah, and you're talking about biking in the sand, which we'll definitely have a little bit of no matter what. But there's also going to be a lot of road riding, or at least gravel road riding. And I think it's pretty important to be in a pace line, like get used to that, and make sure someone on the team is, you know, making sure everybody's on. You know, make sure you have a way of communicating to say, you know, we need to stick together and we need to use each other's draft to help the team go faster, and even have a tow cable to tow someone if you can, because a lot of times a tow will just keep the team together. It doesn't necessarily pull the slower teammate that much, but enough that everyone can stay together. And, you know, if you're on tow, it doesn't mean you're not working. I'll vouch for that.
Yeah.
Chip, you may not know this, but I'm working back there. I really am.
Okay. That's here sleeping.
No, I haven't been on tow much lately, but I do know it's just a give and take. And sometimes it's just there to keep you all together and keep that distance from growing.
Yeah, but practice the pace line. This is one thing. It's like don't figure it out when you're already tired and exhausted. Like take the team out and practice. And usually the stronger person's up front because they're breaking the wind. Everybody else tucks in behind them, but they've got to accelerate slowly, decelerate slowly. Like you can't throw in your brakes because somebody's 2 foot off your back tire, and all of a sudden you got to pile up. So you definitely got to communicate, especially like if there's potholes or debris on the road. You got to kind of move over and get away from it, because the people behind you, if they're 6 inches to the right or left, they're not going to see it. So there's a lot of stuff with pace lining that you want to get the hang of. But I'm a big fan of the tow cable as well, because like when we were in Paraguay, the bike broke, and so Lewis had to I had my running shoes on and I was on the bike in the back with no power, and Lewis was towing me. And then whenever we got to an uphill, I would run up the hill, and then I would bomb the downhills, and then he'd tow me on the flat. If we hadn't had a tow cable, I would have been jogging for like 17 hours or something.
It saved the day.
It really did. Yeah. So bring a tow cable, even if you're not planning on any one person using it. Just have the ability to tow in your bike somewhere.
Yeah. And so while we're talking about terrain, what about the animals?
What about the animals?
What about the wildlife? There is some. It'll be interesting to see how much we see on this route. I suspect just as much as usual. And it's gator land down here. Like, I think when I realize there's so many is when it gets dark and you see their eyeballs glowing back at you. Right. Otherwise, you know, you don't even notice them. They must be there, but you don't know they're there. But then you're on the paddle and you're like, what's that? Oh, yeah. I know what that is. And then all of a sudden you feel like you're seeing them everywhere.
Oh, they're everywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, all that to say, there's nothing to be truly afraid of. At least from our experience, we have challenged those gators to come get us.
Yeah, we have.
And they have not come for us.
And
we have laid down in their nest and had a mommy gator tell us to leave.
Yes.
And we survived. We hope never ever to do that again.
Yes. So a couple of things to listen for. Well, one thing, okay. The gators are going to be all over the place, especially on the path. And they're mostly small, like let's say 6 feet and less, like they're little, and 6 foot gator, like it could hurt you, but it's probably not going to kill you. It's not these ones that like swallow you whole and take you underwater. But there are some big ones out there, but we just don't see them as often. So you're going to see a lot of gators, but they're not the ones to be really scared of. They want nothing to do with you. They're probably going to run if they see you coming. The one that scares me a little bit, that they kind of go underwater, and then you can like be walking through waist deep muck, and then you step on a log that moves, and that's a little bit freaky. So just be aware of that. Maybe use your hiking poles to stir it up a little bit before you go. But a couple things. One is the baby gators make an interesting little noise, and we didn't learn this until our third time doing this race, but it's like this weird little bark. And they're basically notifying mom, something's here bothering me. I need you to come. And so, but then mom comes and they do something, and I can't make the sound, but they call it bellowing. Growl. It's like a growl, but it really sounds like a boat motor starting. Like literally you'll be on the paddle and you feel like, wow, I just heard a boat, and there's no boat there. What's that? And that's a gator like bellowing, probably telling you to get the hell out. So that when we were playing with gators last year, we heard that boat motor sound and we did not know what it was. And then we looked it up later and played it on YouTube, and I was like, holy crap, that was right next to us, because we were in her den with her babies. But we got into trouble on the paddle. We had to pull over and sleep, and we chose her den to sleep.
Well, I do consider them a little bit like bears. Like, they don't want anything to do with you. So if you make enough noise and be known that you're there, is there anything really to be worried about? Anyway, I have to mind over matter at sometimes. And like I said, we've tested the waters. I think even one year, Caitlin got out of the canoe and started tromping around in this like 3 or 4 foot deep water that was covered with green. What is that stuff?
It's like lily pads or something?
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah. But right where gators should be. And she's like, I'm getting out. I'm going to go find this. And yeah, unfortunately, we were in the wrong spot.
Yeah, that can happen. So any of that vegetation that's on the water and you can't really see under it, like that's.
But I mean, what I'm saying is nothing happened. So no reason to be afraid. And
most gator attacks are provoked. And I don't think in the C2C anybody's ever been bit by a gator, and it's been going on for like 20 something years. So you probably have nothing to worry about. Snakes is the other one. Now, we know that they're out there. It's Florida. But we've never really had a problem with snakes. We almost never see snakes down here. There was a reported dry bite last year. I think they didn't feel it, and there was no poison, but they get home and they see 2 little punchers. So I don't know, but I like to wear the Moxie gaiters and cover my legs up a little bit, so maybe it would stop a snake bite. But it's just one of these. We've raced in jungles, we've raced all around the world, and I don't know, we just don't see snakes that often. So it's possible. That's why you have a cell phone and 911, and take your training and be ready for it if it happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about the race itself. Let's get into some of this stuff. Like I said, Jeff uses CalTopo, which is really good mapping software. It's got a lot of the open source data from OpenStreetMap on there. Normally the scale is going to be either 50,000th scale when you're like biking across these large sections of Florida, which we're going to do. I mean, one year we biked like 320 miles. It's crazy. And then the others, like normally the trek sections and stuff, is going to be a 124,000 scale. I normally carry a 124 and a 125 map tool, because if they're printed incorrectly, sometimes the 125 map tool actually fits the 124 scale map. So have both if you can.
Or you can always cut off
the
scale from the map itself, which is going to match the map you're using.
Yeah. So you cut either the scale at the bottom, or you cut down the side of the map and use the UTMs, but you could make your own. Nice to have packing tape though to cover it up so it doesn't get all flimsy and floppy. Scroll down a little bit. Okay. Another thing. So yeah, we figured this out after like the second or third time. So you're not going to get maps prior to the race. So you really, there's no problem going to sleep because there's nothing to do. You just got to basically get as much sleep as you can. They're going to hand you your maps when you get on the bus in the morning. Normally that's 6 a.m. It might be 5, who knows? So immediately, one is be sure to check your maps because every once in a while, like they're printing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of maps. Sometimes map 2 is missing. So go through and count all the numbers. That's happened to us before, and they'll give you another set of maps. You definitely want to take a lap board with you. Now, our favorite way of doing that is you go to Domino's and you get a couple pizzas, and then you take the 2 pizza boxes, you put them together, and you tape them up, and then you bring that with you. And so now you have something to lay the maps out on and mark them up while you're bouncing down the road and it's still dark and you're using your headlamp. But it's nice to have something to lay those maps on. And then you can just throw it away when you get to the start. Let's see. You want to talk about the relay?
Yeah, I mean, this race, I think every year we've done it, has had a relay so that you could choose how many teammates you want to send out to do one section of the relay and how many you want to do for the other section. And that gives a chance for the people who are left behind to sleep. So that's really what we're aiming for. We're hoping to get there in time for our first big sleep for this race. And yeah, we've done all different configurations before. I think one year we actually all went out on one of the legs because we needed to do it that way. But
that's right, we did.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll split it up 2 and 2 this time, which we do most years. And at that TA, there's usually tents that are available if they're not taken. So that's a TA where we intend to take our own tent and set it up just in case there's not one there and available, because they won't have enough tents for every single team to be there at the same time. It's not a bad idea to have something to tape on the outside of the tent, that says occupied or whatever, so that there's not people like unzipping and looking in to see if there's room for someone else. So people know, okay, that's tent's taken.
If you do bring your own tent, you're able to, and usually, again, we don't know where this TA is going to be, but if it's like the last ones, it's usually a big area and the tents are going to be right there near the TA. There's probably going to be music playing and a lot of people opening their gear bins and shutting and talking.
Party central, even though it's expected that people are going to sleep there.
So if you have
don't forget your
earplugs,
face mask,
eye mask. Yep.
Obviously, you got to have something between you and the ground to make it a good sleep. You don't have to, but it makes it so much better to have a sleeping pad. And then having the tent keeps the bugs out. And yeah. And if it's going to rain, I mean,
definitely want a tent.
Yeah, we don't plan to take our tent with us on any of the legs. But I do think it's going to be key for us at least that TA, if not another TA.
And if you have your own tent, then you can set it up, a couple 100 meters away from the TA, and then you're quieter and nobody's going to be checking your tent to see if they can move in with you.
And good weather, you might be fine without a tent, and you might be fine, just going further off. But that's our strategy.
Yeah.
So,
now, also the relays are usually pretty long. Like they could be, I don't know, again, anywhere from 2 or 3 up to 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Depending, because it depends on the navigator, depends on if you're running or not, and all of that. But if you aren't sure about it, will you be able to sleep? A lot of times you just pass out because you're exhausted. But if you're not sure, if you have anxiety or something like that, you can take melatonin, which you can get off the shelf place, and that I can normally take that. It'll knock me out, and I don't feel groggy when I wake up in the morning. It just kind of tells your body it's time to go to bed.
It is surprising that it's hard to calm your brain a little bit. You're exhausted, yet you can't sleep. Yeah, that's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, I've had that, especially if there's bugs or noises. Sometimes it's just hard to sleep. The other one is nasal spray. If you have any congestion, I found that having the nasal spray really helps so that you're not like mouth breathing and things like that. Like it basically, you got to get good quality sleep if you're going to have a fun, safe race. And so do everything you can when you get there to set yourself up for really good quality sleep, because you only got, if you're being competitive, you only got 2 or 3 hours, and then you're back on your feet moving again.
So here's another thing though, that just to keep in mind. If you're part of the pack that is coming into the relay kind of late in the race, you may have to skip it in its entirety. I mean, it is a relay. So each segment of the relay comes back to the same point. So you could skip both relays and just either everyone sleep and then move on and don't do any of the relay, or you know, hopefully you get there within enough time to get both relays done and everyone getting some sleep.
Yeah. And again, that's the other thing we didn't, I think, can't remember if we started off, but yeah, we did. It's very, very hard to clear the course. So on the relays, there's normally going to be fool's points. So you're going to have some that are clustered kind of close to the TA, and then there'll be some that like you're trekking 10K out to go get it. So if you are you know, if you're mid-pack and you're not trying to clear the course, then the relay is going to have a couple good things to cut. But don't forget, like by cutting points there, you're cutting sleep time in a nice, safe environment. So
last year the relay was a paddle. It was a paddle.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway, this year it's supposed to be a trek. So yeah.
Okay. So then food at the TAs. So we're still talking about the race. So AR Georgia in general is known for really good, or I'm sorry, Warrior Adventure Racing now is very good at the TAs. They got excellent volunteers. They're, especially at C2C, they're cooking hot food. So if it's the morning time, you got like bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. And then in the evening, it might be hot dogs and hamburgers or wraps or something. And they got lots of really good food. And usually you can get, you know, normally I come in, I get a couple sandwiches and then I eat them and then I go to bed and I wake up and I have 2 more sandwiches. So it's a really good time to upload a lot of good calories that aren't just like energy bars and stuff like that. If you have dietary preferences, make sure you contact them ahead of time. Like, for example, I can't eat gluten. So a lot of times they'll have gluten-free options or gluten-free bread just for those of us that can't do that. Sometimes I've brought my own bread and I hand it to them and say, can you make me a sandwich on my bread? And then they carry it from TA to TA. But either way, that you're going to be able to get a lot of calories at the TAs. And there's always sodas, there's chips and snacks and Gatorades. And
yeah, which is yet another reason why this is a good beginner race. That isn't necessarily customary, just in case you were wondering about other races. Other races won't usually have so much great food readily available and free.
So back to food. Don't freak out and like think you have to have 74 hours worth of food in your gear bin and like you can't make weight on your gear bin. Like between the TAs and the stores, you don't have to pack every calorie that you plan on consuming for the race.
We are trying to tell ourselves this because it's a classic mistake that we pack too much food.
Yes.
Every single race. Maybe not this one, but the way it's the way it's looking. We went to the store yesterday and we already have enough food, probably. Anyway, yeah. So what about the course strategy? I think we should move on to that.
Let's do that.
Because there's so much course strategy in this race. Like we already said, you can skip as many points as you want, but recognizing the best places to cut points, I think is really important. And this year there's 2 cutoffs that we need to be mindful of. And so, they'll have on the sheet, this section is between 5 and 10 miles. So for instance, that gives you a clue that you could cut 5 miles off if you need to. And some sections, there'll be more of a, variety of, 5 miles to 30 miles is you could cut a whole bunch during a delay like that. But
yep. And if you're new to it and you definitely are not clearing and you're just trying to get through it and finish and have a good time, from the minute you start this race, think about what points to cut. Because like, for example, one year, the paddle section, I think we cut point 2 and 3 because we knew we weren't clearing. So we went ahead and cut points up front. That saved us hours of time that we would have just been paddling when, there's no way. Think of it like minutes per checkpoint. And so kind of do the math. And it's like, if it's going to take us 45 minutes to get that 1 point, like maybe that's one that we want to cut and then save it for the other points that are maybe 15 minutes in between.
Of course, from a dot watching standpoint, you're already moving down the ranking.
Yeah.
But I mean, who cares about that?
Nope.
Yeah. If you recognize points early on that are fool's points and you don't anticipate clearing, or it's just a discipline that you're not as good at, or you don't like as much, like, shall I say, the paddles, which was the first point we cut last year was a paddle point. Anyway, maybe this is a good time in strategy to talk about race etiquette, because you're going to find a broad range of how serious people are in this race. And sometimes even, I can tell you for us, sometimes we're near the back of the pack, but we're still competitive because we've gotten more points than the people we're around. So you can't just assume that you run across a team and they're going to want to say team up with you or, make it, make it a joint effort, because that's a lot of fun. I think this race has a lot of solos, and a lot of them do want to join up and link together, and they work together a lot. And sometimes teams do too. You know, you get into a sticky situation and you're all looking for the same point at the same time, and you've all spent a certain amount of time looking, and then you kind of start to collaborate. You know how that goes, like, and that's definitely completely acceptable in this race generally. But I would just say, like, I don't like when a team just gives me information without asking if I want it. Like, sometimes you'll walk up to where you want to attack a point, and someone will say, "Oh, it's right over there." And to me, I'm like, why did they tell me that? I want to find it myself. I want to, I want to do this, straight up, and I want to be competitive. And so sometimes it's appreciated when, you're working together with people, and sometimes you just want to be, left alone so you can, tackle the problem yourself. But you'll see everything in this race. I think probably, the leaders probably don't chit chat much at all and try to keep quiet. And again, since it's got a mix of beginners and so many options for how you want to approach the race, it's kind of hard to judge, like, what type of team are you coming across?
Absolutely.
But
and there you'll see everything from teams that are being like let's say it's at night and you're trying to find a checkpoint and you don't want anybody else to see it. You blacking out all your lights, you're sneaking in to get it, and you're sneaking back out. Maybe you have a certain call you do, and like you can't say I found it, so you say, dang, I found a snake, or snake, or you use like a keyword, and that way your team knows that you were able to find the CP but get out before you had let all the other people know. But then other times, you see a new team out there and they're obviously lost or in the wrong spot and they're just frustrated. And you're like, hey guys, you need a hand or anything? And then, so we've stopped and helped people before. It's just, it's one of them, if it's a competitive team, of course, you're not going to help them. But on the newer teams, it's like even the top teams will stop to help somebody if they're really turned around.
Of course, we need to say race etiquette. If anyone needs legitimate help, if someone's hurt or, just someone's really, really gone off the rails and they just need you, of course you're gonna help, no matter how competitive you are. That's just adventure racing spirit and etiquette, and it's what's great.
And what we shouldn't do, which is bad, would be you're in the wrong reentrant and you yell got it to trick people into coming over. Or don't say, oh, it's just right up there 100 meters and it's not really. It's not, like don't do that. That's shady. Nobody likes that. That's also, not cool. One year we saw some people using their Garmin watch with the GPS. It's like, come on, like we're out here to learn navigation and do it. Like, don't use your electronics and all that. Use it in AR mode. Don't cheat. That is frustrating.
Okay. We've only seen that one time.
Yeah.
And it happens. Anyway. Okay. So what else about strategy?
So, okay, going over to the navigation side of things, I would recommend measuring everything. Like I said, that you're not going to see topo lines in a lot of the areas on this. You have no idea, are you at a high point or a low point, or is it undulating or whatever? So you're really going to be going a lot off of your compass bearings. Like, for example, on a bike section, you're just going a really long way until it bends to the right, and then you're looking. So you really need to know where you are, how far you've gone. Altimeters are probably not going to be useful here at all. If you're hiking, you want to be pace counting or measuring time on how far you've been so that you know when you've gone too far. But this is one of these, the navigation, I would call it surgical. It's not big, huge features that are like, oh, we just need to go on the other side of that mountain and it's going to be there. This is like, you really got to be on your game because it all looks the same. It's flat, it's green, and it's hard. And of course, water, it might show a stream on the map that could be a lake. It's flat, it's swamp. So the mapping software can't be perfect. It's not the edge of water is never exactly where the edge of water is actually really.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what race you're doing. There is going to be a time when the map doesn't match reality, and vice versa. Just that's going to happen no matter what. So measuring is the best way to combat that.
Yes. And you're going to make errors coming right out. If you're like us, you're going to make errors right out of the TA. You're fed, you're slept, everything's great. Let's just go. And then 30 minutes later, you're walking in the wrong direction on the wrong road. So Stay on your game when you leave TAs. Learn from our mistakes.
Yeah. And, talking about measuring, you usually need to be communicating that to whoever's helping measure. It's not like just one person who's keeping track of that. And it just reminds me that communication in the team is just so key. It really needs to be direct and really specific, especially when things get dicey. But yeah, if you need help and you're not communicating that effectively enough, no one's going to pay attention to it.
Right. So that could be you're starting to hallucinate. You're having sleep monsters. You're on the bike and you're feeling like you're going to fall over and get hurt. It's not like, hey guys, I'm getting a little tired. Like, no, like I need a safety stop. Like I need to lay down for 15 minutes. Tell the navigator, hey, we need to power down. So the second you find a spot, let's power down. That could also happen on the paddle section if somebody's like worried about getting tipped out of the boat. Like, and it's hard to find places to pull over because they're in a swamp, right? But so the idea is like sometimes you just have to find maybe a private dock and you just lay on the dock for 15 minutes to get out and someplace safe to lay down. But also any type of injuries, if you're feeling, a sprained ankle or any of the, a hamstring or anything like that, that's like you need to stop and stretch or whatever. Don't wait till stuff breaks. You got to communicate that to the team and fix stuff before it breaks badly.
Yeah, agreed. And, strategy can sometimes come in the form of, how to get through those low moments.
Right.
You're going to have them. It's not all a party. In fact, sometimes it gets pretty hard. How do you get through them?
I think experience helps. Like when we did our first couple races, it was like miserable. And then you kind of learn to suffer and you learn that this isn't as bad as, for example, we did a hike in Paraguay. It was the World Championships, and day one, the leg one took us like 76, 78 hours or something like that. So the entire length of the sea to sea and some, all on foot, all remote. It was miserable, especially the big, long, flat area. But now that I've done that, I'm like, shoot, if this trek's only 12 hours, that's nothing. We did 72 in Paraguay. So some of it's experience that'll help you get through it. Your body is capable of suffering. Your mind is capable of suffering for long periods of time. The better you get at it, it sucks less.
So yeah, this is another reason this race is a great beginner expedition race because the legs themselves are generally not crazy long.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But they give you a feel of what it would be like for it to be longer. And for a lot of people, this is super long. I remember when we thought this was like, this is hard. We've that very first year. Oh gosh. You just learn so much every year that you do the next one.
Singing songs is fun. Telling jokes sometimes is fun. Sharing snacks. I know a lot of teams will have like this special snack that they only pull out in the low time. You can't just like chew on it normally. So whatever it is, the Sour Patch Kids or whatever. Share if you're detecting that the team's having a little bit of a low moment, that's a good time to do that.
I don't know. I feel like I need to channel Caitlin for this answer too. How do you get through the low moments? Just everyone shut up. Maybe you don't want to talk. Maybe you don't want to joke or sing. Just tell everybody, you know what? I'm having a low moment. Shut up. Yeah. I'm fine, but in other words, whatever works for you, communicate it to. And if someone's trying to help you feel better and what they're doing is not working, tell them that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
What else? Any other low stuff? Oh, also, like inevitably during some race, whether it's this one or another race, somebody's going to be hurting to the point where they want out. They just want to quit, whether it's mid leg or at a TA or whatever. Those decisions, especially when you're hallucinating and everybody's exhausted, you're not really making good decisions at that point. So try not to make any big decisions like we're going to quit or whatever, or we're going to drop a teammate and keep going. Get some sleep, get some food, and make that decision when you're a little bit fresher. Like don't come hot into the TA all been out of shape and then say, I'm out, we're done. Go tell the race director that you're quitting. Give yourself time and food and rest. And, it's a long race. You literally could, even if somebody's injured or whatever, let's say they've sprained something, you might be able to sleep for 6 hours. And then when they wake up, they're like, hey, it's not so bad. Let's go ahead and try the next leg. And then you keep going. So
I'd go even one step further in saying do that, but also go out on the next leg. Just don't let yourself quit at the TA that you're at. Just give it a try. Even if you go out, 5 or 10 more minutes and then you have to turn back around and then quit.
Right.
That's fine. I mean, you obviously have to make it to a TA, or that's also race etiquette. If you are going to call it, then you do need to do that. Try to get to a TA on your own power,
Yes.
if at all possible. It's a lot harder on the race organization to be rescuing teams if they are capable of making it to a TA.
Yes.
So,
yeah. Please
anyway.
don't get rescued. That's not good for your team. It's not good for the race director. They're already thin on volunteers. I mean, we're lucky just to have volunteers that are willing to do this. If they got to find a U-Haul to come get you and your 4 bikes because you went in the wrong direction for 100 miles, that's really annoying. So yeah, make it to the TA if you need to quit, and then you'll get sorted out there.
But another reason this is a good beginner race, if you do have an emergency, you are accessible. You're not
Yes.
out, you're not miles and hours away from help. So if you really need help, I mean, don't think that you can't call a race director. I don't want you to think
Right.
that.
Yep.
Anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
So
A couple of the little things. They said it last year on the paddle section, because normally race director is going to be providing paddles and life jackets, but a lot of us bring our own equipment. Take one of the spare paddles with you, because every year it seems like somebody breaks a paddle and it gets hard. So have that extra paddle with you.
I don't think it's been a race provided paddle that is broken, though. It's usually anyone who has a carbon fiber paddle. We're going to be using our wing blade paddles that are carbon fiber this year. So we probably will have an extra paddle. And really the only reason we know that this happened is, we saw a canoe with 3 people going by and the middle person didn't have a paddle. And they're like, yeah, some other team that was a team of 2, maybe 4, I don't know, whatever it was, they had broken paddle and didn't have a spare. And that team was nice enough to give 1 paddle to the other team.
Yep.
So they, the team of 3 were able to switch in and out and do it with only 2 paddles. Anyway,
Yep.
I think that's pretty cool. That's kind of another example of the adventure racing spirit.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you don't want to be the team that's like waiting for a 3-person team to come by so you can ask them for their paddle.
Yeah.
So,
Or like if a solo breaks a paddle, like they are stuck without somebody helping. So another thing is, and this is with all races, but it'd be nice to have some Tyvek tape. I mean, I prefer Tyvek over duct tape. Inevitably, some boat starts leaking. And, last year there was a solo that kept having to pull over and empty their boat. It's like almost every race we find there's some boat that's leaking. A lot of what it is they get used to over and over and over, and people drag them, and then it cuts through the boat. So even if you're in a canoe, it's nice to be able to patch a hole so boats stop leaking. You don't have to carry the whole roll, but just have some type of way to fix a leaky boat on any of these big races.
Yeah.
And this is a fun one. So on big long paddle sections, especially at night, it's been in the 60s. So it's actually, if you're wet, it's, if either you're sweaty wet, or if you're dew wet, or if you actually got drips on you from your paddle. Either way, a lot of times you're kind of chilly, and paddling, especially the second paddle where you're already tired and you're not really pushing real hard, it's real easy to kind of get cold. Now, what's interesting is when you're paddling, it's not so bad, but when it hits you is you get out of the boat. Let's say you got to pee or something. You get out of the boat and you stand up, and all that cold blood that's in your legs that's been stagnant, all of a sudden that goes through your body and you get the shivers. You feel like you're the coldest that you've ever been. Be prepared for that. Like, we even did it last year when we were coming up to the place with the gator where we slept. I was like, okay, everybody, when we get out, we're going to get super cold. And sure enough, one of our teammates almost had hypothermia. He was like shaking, and like we had to do like get him dry, get him warmed up, because I mean it was bad from that. So either way, just be ready for it to be colder than expected on the paddle, especially when you stand up.
Yep.
All right, sleep.
Yeah, we did talk about sleep quite a bit already.
Well, we didn't talk about sleep
on
monsters too much. So if this is your first expedition, if you get good sleep, you're not going to have sleep monsters. It's usually when you're kind of new and you don't have good sleep strategy, and you basically push until you can't push any harder anymore. And that's when the sleep monsters start getting you. It starts off with, for me at least, I mean, sleep monsters are kind of like doing drugs. It's like affects everybody differently. It starts off with me, I get visual hallucinations. So like maybe I'm walking along and a leaf looks like a Snickers bar, and I look again and it's just a leaf. It starts off these little tiny things where it's just your brain starts getting creative. Like you basically start entering a little bit of a dream world. And so things just start being a little bit weird all the way. If you keep going like that, normally that means you should stop. Now, if you're on a trek, you can kind of keep going because the worst thing you do is fall down. Not that big of a deal, not that dangerous. So if you're on a bike, you start getting the visual hallucinations. It's probably smart to get a 15-20 minute nap. That's usually enough to make the sleep monsters go away. Normally, when the sun comes up, they'll go away. It's normally this 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. period of time. If you didn't get sleep the night before the race, so that would be Wednesday night, then Thursday night in the race, you might start having some hallucinations. But most people, if you can get a good night's sleep the night before the race, you're probably not going to have sleep monsters on the first night. You're definitely going to get them on the second night if you haven't had any sleep. What else?
Yeah, well, mine start with auditory
Okay.
hallucinations. I start hearing construction work. Like, what's that? Oh, no, that's nothing. That's just my brain making something up for me. But you know, it begs the question of where do you sleep when you suddenly have an issue? And we've slept in so many crazy, weird places. You know, really, when you need it, you need it. Like we were biking on one of the legs at a fairly busy intersection, and we saw a clump of bushes. We actually dragged our bikes under the bushes and slept underneath the bushes right at that intersection. And we had a great sleep.
Had a great sleep, yeah.
I don't know how long it was. It was such a great sleep that I think you left your backpack there or something.
Yeah, we left and had to go back. You're right.
But yeah, but we've looked for other places, like church buildings often have an awning that you know, at least keeps you covered.
Yep. So it does do at night. So the idea is that one strategy is try to get a little bit of sleep at like dusk where, you know, the bugs aren't out yet and it's not cold yet. And then that way you can push through the night. So the idea is either sleep from 2 to 5 in that time frame, because that's when your body really, really wants to sleep, but it is cold and dewy, and sometimes you just can't time it just right. So the other strategy is sleep a little bit in the daytime before and after the night so that you can kind of get through the nights. So instead of one big sleep, you do 2 little sleeps. Everybody's a little bit different on that. But definitely look for cover. That if you're going to sleep at night, being anything above you, it could be bushes, it could be like you said, an awning or any kind of storefront where there's like a little thing on the outside. If you're in a city, you got your bike, you got to be worried about people stealing your stuff. So that's another thing, is try to get private so that the general public isn't like driving by and sees 4 nice bikes sitting there while you guys are sleeping. Sometimes you can find abandoned stuff. Who knows? I mean, it could be an old barn or a maybe new construction. You might be able to slip in and sleep in new construction and nobody's there to hassle you during the middle of the night. Obviously, that's private property and you could get in some trouble, but sometimes it's the only place where you can find it. But the nice thing is plan your sleep as much as you can. Try not to keep pushing until you completely go off the rails. Or if one person's having the sleep monsters and everybody else is fine, then you can kind of take care of that person. But if all the team is really having a hard time, your nav is going to start making errors. People start getting grumpy. Everything slows down too. It's like if you just get some sleep and you'll be refreshed and you can go fast again. So it's best to time it. Like if you see a town coming up, then it's like, okay, guys, you know, there's a town. Or if you're on the paddle section and you can see some houses on the map, maybe there's a way that you know, instead of in a gator den, you can find like dry land with, you know, maybe some concrete or something to sleep on. But just try to control your sleep, like plan it out so you're in control and it's not happening to you when you least expect it.
And so we sort of answered this question already, but we've gotten it quite a few times, is what do you take with you when you're out on a leg? Like we said, we'll have a tent and sleeping bags and pads and all of that in our TA bin. But what are we going to take out on a leg? And I think usually after the first night we usually don't need anything. So we don't take anything extra with us. And then starting the second night, we usually take a sleeping pad with us. Of course, the bivy sack is only required for this race for the team, and a space blanket, but we usually take something each individually that's better than a space blanket. So I'll probably take my rad bag this time.
Yeah, like a rad bag. Oh, this is a South African brand, but the Stole Escape Bivy, I think, is the one that's what you don't want is the stuff that's crinkly. Like they make that little cheap thing, and it's like it's just everything you move around, it makes noise and all that. You want one of the breathable Soul Escape bibbies or something that's breathable. So it's more like a fabric. It's still small. It's less than it's not like a big roll of toilet paper, but you don't want anything that gets humidity on the inside. You're probably going to be wet when you're laying down just because you've been sweating. So you get inside that and it turns into like a rainforest. It's gross. So you definitely want breathable. But and also it's nice to have, like, let's say you are scratched up on your legs. If you're just like laying on the ground, I mean, bugs are going to be attracted to that, and you're going to have bugs biting at your scabs and all that. So it's really nice to be inside a bag so the bugs can't really get you. Maybe put your rain jacket over your head or a shirt or a buff on your head, stop the bugs. But
yeah, that reminds me that, the mandatory gear list, you must have all of those things at all times. But there's also other things that it's smart to have, even though they're not on the mandatory list. And like I was just saying, the bivy sack is only required one per team for this race. But for the sake of actually sleeping, in the wild, we're each going to have one with us at some legs of the race. So you just have to know, like, and sometimes they have taken things off of the mandatory gear list if the weather's permitting. They might take off the mid layer, for instance, of the list. But if you still might want it,
right?
You have to judge yourself at that point. And yeah, rain pants and rain jacket I have with me, whether they're required or not. It's just mandatory.
Especially on the paddle.
Makes such a difference. Yep. Yeah. All right. So we are honing in on the end of this episode.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about food?
Yeah, let's talk food. Because it's one of the questions that comes up on all the social media. It's like, what do we eat? So like we said, in this race specific, the TAs are going to have a lot of hot food. They may not have vegetarian options. There's a lot of meat. So, like I said, hot dog, will they?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't remember salad. Oh, they did have salad in Colorado.
I don't know.
I ate a ton of salad.
Vegan a lot of the time.
Vegan. Okay.
And Jeff's vegetarian.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
If you're a meat eater, you're going to be
They're open to needing all options. Let's just say that.
But if you need some kind of crazy vegan, vegetarian, whatever, let them know ahead of time. Maybe they'll have some stuff for you. Okay, so then
you can't eat gluten, and we don't call you crazy.
I'm
crazy. All right.
You should. Okay, so what do you carry with you? Some people do a lot of the liquid calories. We prefer scratch packets, which give you your potassium and your salts and some calories. Bend Racing makes 4-hour fuel. You can pretty much race the entire race off of that, but definitely, train with it, because some people like it, some don't. Maybe it affects your body differently than other people, but I know some people are using that. A lot of people I've talked to that they like real food. Like they're going to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Maybe they put pizza in little Ziploc bags, oodles and noodles, Mountain House meals are another one.
McDonald's hamburgers. You guys hear about those being in the bins for days and still tasting great?
Yep. We did Moe's subs many years. Not Moe's. What is it? It's Jersey Mike's. So we'll take Jersey Mike's subs and you put them each, or cut it up and put it in individually, what do you call those things? Ziploc baggies. And they last. Just don't do like lettuce and tomatoes and stuff, but as long as it's just meats and cheeses and stuff like that, you'll be fine.
Obviously a variety. You want sweet, salty, crunchy, mushy. I think towards the end of the race, mushy's better and better. Nice bready, soft things are what I like towards the end, and salty, crunchy at the beginning.
And avoid stuff that's gets on your hands that's sticky, like honey or anything that melts. Like maybe stay away from like chocolate and stuff that if it's a 85, 90 degree day and it's going to be all nasty and gooey, that way the trash gets all nasty. So it's nice to get stuff that, it can maintain, it can be eaten at any temperature and not be a mess. Like I was doing, I was putting honey on my peanut butter and jelly, and so I kind of eat it out of the bag, but I don't want to touch it because if you get honey on your gloves, it's just gross. Brush your teeth a lot. A lot of times in these longer races, this isn't going to happen to you in a 24-hour race, but if you eat a lot of energy bars and stuff, your tongue will start getting blisters and stuff. It's some kind of chemical that's in the processed foods that if you eat too much of it, it'll tear up your mouth, and it's really uncomfortable. So I carry one of these little tiny toothbrushes with me, and I probably brush my teeth 5 times a day during the race. Now, some people go through the whole race and not brush their teeth, which just seems disgusting to me.
Well, there's a happy medium.
Happy medium.
5 times a day, a little excessive.
Yeah.
2 times, I can get down with that.
It's like if I eat like Cliff Bars, like eat 2 or 3, you start, I just want to get that taste out of my mouth. And so I don't know, that's just me, but you do you, but just be aware. The other thing you can do is take the little thing of, what do you call that? Mouthwash. And that also will get some of that stuff off your tongue. So if you just take a little tiny sip of mouthwash and get your whatever off of your tongue, that's another way to stop from having the tongue problems.
Yeah.
So
I think we've covered
food.
like a lot of
info.
stuff.
Yep.
You know, most of it or a lot of it's specific to C2C, but it does apply to many other expedition races.
Yep.
And we thought we'd share our highs and lows for the C2C over the years. So maybe we should start with the lows.
Start with the lows. That way we end on a high.
Yeah, I think some of our lowest moments have been dropping a teammate.
Yes.
It has happened. And, you know, sometimes it's just out of your control and theirs. And it's pretty sad. I mean, it's something you look forward to and you work towards for, you know, long time. So that's definitely a low. It's good to have the discussion ahead of time. If one of your teammates needs to drop, is it okay with everyone else if you continue, so that you're not having that conversation in the heat of the moment? You're having that conversation before, saying, if this happens, if that happens, what do we do? But anyway, that was
in those specific situations. Let's say in one situation, somebody has a knee injury and they think it's going to get really bad, and so they need to drop, but otherwise they're healthy and safe. Normally in that type of situation, you could drop them off the TA, they hang out the TA, they'll eventually be taken back. Maybe they just want to continue to hang at the TA. Maybe they volunteer. Maybe they want to go back to the race hotel, but the race director can sort all that out. In a situation where you have a teammate that needs to go to the hospital for something, that's where you might want to don't drop the teammate on the race director and make the volunteers have to transport somebody to him from the hospital. If you can, that's where somebody, at least one person from the team, should stay back and stay with that person to make sure that they're okay at the hospital. And again, you don't want a random volunteer being sucked out of the race to deal with somebody with an injury like that. And that has happened to us before. So, but either way, have these discussions ahead of time. But it's highly recommended for the team to keep going. You drove all the way down here, you flew in, you planned for this race. If one teammate wants to drop for whatever reason, if they're healthy and safe and they're cool with it, the rest of the team should go on as a 3-person team. Just, you're not ranked anymore, but you can still cross the finish line and have an amazing experience. Maybe you pair up with a solo and they come along with you. Or sometimes it's like 2 teams that were 4, they've dropped 2. These 2 teams come together and now they have a 4-person team again. And now you've met 2 new friends. Maybe you race with them again in the future. But just the idea is that, don't quit if you don't have to. Now I wouldn't, unless you really know what you're doing, I would not recommend going on as a solo if you've never done a big race before as a solo. Always, it's much safer if you at least 2 people. But there's a lot of solos in this race, and luckily the teams usually look out for the solos in case they're having any trouble. But unless you know what you're doing, just that might be, if it's a 2-person team and one drops, consider dropping unless you are confident that you know what you're doing. Okay, so those are kind of the lows. Another low is, I know I got injured. I was trying to tow, and then I eventually got injured to where my Achilles were hurting and tops of my knees were hurting, and it was like every pedal stroke was just terrible. And Caitlin was feeling really strong, so she takes my pack and some of the stuff out of her pack. And so I'm riding there looking at my pack, thinking of all the crap that I have in there that I probably shouldn't have, or I had too much of, that here's somebody else carrying my extra weight just because I'm a dumbass. And so that, to me, now I always kind of pack my pack as if somebody else might have to carry it. And that'll make me feel a little bit better. But I remember after like an hour of looking at my pack, I'm like, Caitlin, wait, pull over. And I started pulling crap out of my pack and throwing it away. I'm like, okay, now let's go. And I probably took 5 pounds of crap out of my pack and ate a bunch of the food and stuff so that she didn't have to carry it. So for me, that was a low, but it was a learning moment for me.
Well, it's always a low when you're the one that's slower than the rest of the team. Right. There's always going to be someone slower than the rest of the team. But I remember at that time I was hurting then too.
Yeah.
And I was drafting you guys and saying, I can't go more than 17K per hour. You're just going to have to keep it at that. I had no power.
Right.
Anyway. That was a low moment.
So that's one thing to think about. Again, normally they say in adventure racing, you can only go as fast as you can get your slowest person to go. So this is not the weakest link in the chain type thing. This is like your job as a team is to get the slowest person as fast as possible. So carry some of their weight, put them on a tow, but also put yourself mentally in their shoes. If they're the one holding back, nobody wants to be the one holding the team back. And so, so one thing you can do is if they're, 20 meters behind you dragging, put them up front, let them set the pace and everybody else gets behind them. It lets them feel like they're part of the group and all of that. Don't leave them hanging back there by themselves, because it's bad enough to be the slowest one, but then to be alienated by the rest of the team, it's just nobody wants to be in that situation. So try to keep the team together, and I don't know, empathize with them.
Yeah, and pain.
Yeah.
Pain is a low. It is
Yeah.
going to be painful.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like I've gotten used to certain pains, so it doesn't feel as bad as the first couple of races, but it's just going to happen. But we should talk about the highs. We've had a lot of highs over the years. I think, there's the scenery. I think it's pretty amazing, especially if you've never been to Florida before. It's a unique environment. There's palm trees everywhere. It's really lush and green. And there was one.
The Spanish moss.
The Spanish moss is beautiful, and going through cypress trees, and it's just a unique environment. Don't take that for granted.
Yep.
Yeah.
And always the sunrises.
Oh,
especially if it's nice out. Sunrises are always amazing if you're on the water or whatever. It's they're beautiful down here. So this race specifically, picking up the vial of sand, because you start off, you fill your vial halfway, and then when you get all the way over the ocean, like filling that vial, and you're not at the finish yet, but that's a nice time. It's a fun little celebration. Usually Randy Erickson's there with the camera, and some people are getting in the water. It's just like a big party there when you get that last little bit of sand.
You feel like you've made it. Like at that point, there's no way you're not going to make it to the finish.
Right.
And coming all that way with your team, like it's almost the fact that you're having that feeling all at the same time, like, because during the race, you're all going to feel different ways, different times, whatever. But at that time, the whole team seems to be like, whew, here we all are. We all did it together. It's like this unity of emotion that is, it's really, I think it's pretty powerful, Ben. I really love that. That's definitely one of my highs.
And since the course isn't necessarily clearable by most teams, a lot of times you're coming through to get that last little bit of sand sometime between sunrise and 10 a.m. So it's beautiful. You're on the water. The sun's coming up. Hopefully it's beautiful outside. But of course, some of the top teams, they might be coming in there at midnight getting their sand. We've never done that. We're always the one coming in screeching at the last minute, right at 11 o'clock when the race shuts down. So
we'll see about that this year. But yeah, that ride also from that moment to the finish. It's like the first couple of years, like, I thought we'd be back to the hotel already. And it's a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. But now that I know you get the sand and you still have to make it to the hotel, that time has become special to me.
Yeah.
I feel like, because like I said, my brain can shut down a little bit. I can start like replaying the things that we had done throughout the few days before. And honestly, like our past teammates come to mind then too a lot. I feel like it's, on that episode of Survivor when they're at the end and they walk past the things of each of the people on the show. I don't know. Do you even watch that?
I don't watch Survivor.
I haven't watched it in years, but it reminds me of that because I start thinking about over the years who we've raced with and what we've learned from everyone that we've raced with. And it's a good time for reflection. So that's a great high.
Yes. Now this year it's a little bit different course. I think it might be pretty quick from the time we get our sand. It might only be a 10 or 15-minute bike ride across, but we'll see. We don't know. But according to Jim Farmer, it looks like the course might not be this really long ride.
He might be right, but he does not know.
I know.
We'll see.
All right. And then of course the finish, right?
Yeah.
Crossing the finish line. It's fun. Again, there'll be food, big party. They do awards. It's a lot of fun. And then you go get some sleep. And then it's time for the after party. Usually it's a restaurant right there within walking distance. Yeah. I heard through the grapevine there might be a karaoke machine that might pop up.
oh boy.
Oh boy. Either way.
You do feel like it's like that time where you don't feel like you want it to end, but at the same time you're like super exhausted.
Yeah.
So it's that being overtired too. It like just brings a flood of emotion to me because I'm tired. I mean, usually when I'm tired, I'm a little, and a little more open.
Get the hotel room. I think Jeff gives us the hotel room the night before the race, Wednesday night. You got to book your own on Sunday night. I highly recommend it. Do not get in your car and drive. It's like 30 minutes after the race, you're going to start powering down. So it's really nice.
On though.
I know.
but I agree. Stay that extra
night. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the C2C. Hopefully that was helpful. That's a
good
big
luck to
fire
both of
hose.
us.
Good
We'll
luck.
see how it goes. It's only 4 days away. So you may not even have time to listen to this before then.
Right. It'll work. It'll be good for next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, everybody. See you at the after party.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for ThisABILITY Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.